Long ago, on a desolate rocky cliff, a giant man from the Neanderthal tribe was playing with his son, little Grendel. But their peace was shattered when the army of King Hodger of Denmark arrived. They regarded the Neanderthals as dangerous, yet they were not perceived as trolls that threatened humankind. The father quickly hid his son behind the cliffs, but mercilessly, he was slain by sword, torch, and arrow, and fell into the abyss. Rodgar caught sight of young Grendel hiding but let him go, convinced the boy would die on his own. Terrified, Grendel crept to his father's corpse, severed the head, and kept it as a vow of vengeance. Years passed, and fate had other plans. Grendel grew strong and mighty. He still kept his father's head as both a reminder and a release for his fury. Whenever grief overtook him, he would climb the hill and strike the skull with stones to fuel his thirst for revenge. One night, he crept into the village ruled by King Hodger and slaughtered the soldiers one by one until he reached the royal hall. The next morning, King Hodger was horrified to see the hall filled with dismembered bodies and missing heads. Meanwhile, far away in the land of Gretland, a legendary warrior named Beowulf had just returned from war. He was known for his unmatched strength, though he often carried himself humbly, treating battles as if they were mere games. One night, while he and his men celebrated victory, dreadful news came from Denmark. A troll was massacring people in the kingdom. With confidence, Beowulf volunteered to help, vowing to slay the creature and return victorious for the sake of his comrades. The next day, Beowulf set sail with his men toward Denmark. The journey was perilous. At one point, pale white hands emerged from beneath the sea, as if trying to drag them down. Yet Beowulf pressed on, fearless. That same night, King Hodger sank deeper into despair from Grendel's terror. The creature not only killed but also tormented him psychologically by attacking those closest to him. The next day, more victims fell to Grendel's wrath. Haunted by guilt from the past, King Hodger grew increasingly despondent, despite his wife's constant attempts to encourage him to stay strong. During a funeral procession, a young priest named Brad Don came to offer his condolences. He advised the king to continue praying, saying that faith could save him. But Hodger replied bitterly, "Prayer," he said, "could not stop Grendel's savagery." Not long after, Beowulf arrived in Denmark. He saw a devastated village and briefly noticed a mysterious woman named Selma. But the villagers warned him to stay away. She was a witch. When he met King Hodger, the king immediately embraced him with great hope. That night, a welcoming feast was held, but as Hodger's mind grew ever more unstable, the queen had to deliver the speech in his place. Afterward, Beowulf stood proudly and swore to kill the troll that had brought terror upon them. Night fell deeper. Beowulf and his warriors stood guard. Outside, Grendel approached the village. He briefly encountered the praying priest, Brad Don. Strangely, Grendel only sniffed him and did not attack, as if realizing that prayer posed no threat. Soon after, he reached the hall, but from behind the doors, he sensed a different kind of human scent. Instead of attacking, he simply urinated and left, leaving the prepared soldiers bewildered. The next morning, Brad Don was questioned about how he survived without weapons. He confidently answered that it was by the protection of God. His response amazed Beowulf and his men. Afterward, Beowulf led his men into the hills to hunt for Grendel's tracks. Along the way, they nearly perished in a trap of wooden spikes made from deer antlers. There, they realized Grendel was not merely a savage troll, he was intelligent. They continued their pursuit into the snow plains, but due to a lack of supplies, they decided to turn back. Elsewhere, Grendel was seen happily playing with the skulls of his victims, like a child with toys. Meanwhile, fear among the villagers grew worse. Seeing that Brad Don had survived, many of them willingly underwent baptism, hoping to receive the same divine protection. Beowulf then went to see Hodger, who remained silent, letting his people place their hopes in Breydon. Yet Beowulf himself still believed that prayer alone would not change anything without real action. Later that afternoon, Beowulf visited Selma, the witch, seeking answers. But Selma only told him that Denmark and King Hodger were under a curse, without explaining the details. This left Beowulf even more confused. He returned to speak with Hodger, and from the king's confession, it was revealed that Grendel had never killed children, women, or the elderly. Grendel only attacked those ready to fight, as if upholding some form of honor. That fact made Beowulf even more curious about the true reason behind all the terror. Hrothgar even mocked him, suggesting Beowulf was starting to believe the nonsense of Selma the witch. When night came, noises were heard again outside the hall. All the soldiers quickly prepared to attack, but once again, they found nothing. Grendel only appeared briefly from the shadows and then fled. The next day, Beowulf went to see Selma again. There, Selma performed a divination ritual to reveal the truth that had long been hidden. But before she could finish, a strange sound echoed outside. Beowulf immediately ran out and caught sight of Grendel, who quickly fled toward the mountains. Beowulf gave chase on horseback, but Grendel managed to climb up a cliff. From above, he spoke in a language Beowulf could not understand. Fortunately, Selma translated. It was then revealed that Grendel had no intention of killing Beowulf because he was not a Dane. But Beowulf, angered, declared that he was born on this land. Grendel only threw small stones at him and disappeared. On their way back, Beowulf questioned Selma again about why Grendel was often seen near her hut. Selma explained that she liked Grendel because ever since the troll appeared, no man from the village dared to disturb her again. Beowulf began to realize that Grendel had a past and a personal reason for killing the villagers, not merely blind savagery. After that, Beowulf met with Hrothgar again. He believed that Grendel was simply waiting for a moment of weakness to strike once more. Hrothgar admitted this was likely true, especially since his own body was growing frail and sickly. His pain had made him resigned to fate, and eventually he accepted baptism from Pastor Braden. Sometime later, Beowulf found several village children throwing stones at a man. They accused him of bringing bad luck, of being the reason Grendel had come. Beowulf quickly stepped in to save him, and in gratitude, the man revealed the location of the cave where Grendel lived, something he had kept secret all this time. But after his baptism, he finally found the courage to speak. Beowulf and his men then set sail toward the hill that concealed the cave. One of the soldiers tried to climb down but nearly fell, as the cliffs were too steep. They finally decided to leave, thinking no one could live in such a place. But before leaving, one soldier urinated on the cliff, offending the man who had shown them the way. On the journey back, Beowulf spotted a small child hiding in another cave. Though only he noticed, a pale white hand suddenly emerged from the water and pulled the same soldier, the one who had urinated on the cliff, into the depths. Fortunately, his comrades managed to save him in time. That night, while the soldiers relaxed and joked around, Beowulf couldn't stop thinking about the child he had seen. He struggled to sleep, haunted by visions of that child holding a sword every time he closed his eyes. The next morning, they were shocked by the news that the man who had shown them the way to Grendel's cave had been found dead. Upon hearing the news, Beowulf and his men immediately set out for the cave, fully prepared. This time, they managed to enter, but a horrifying sight awaited them. Human bones, still clad in armor, were scattered everywhere. Though Grendel was not there, one desperate soldier foolishly smashed the skull of Grendel's father, an act that clearly foretold disaster. Not long after, Beowulf went to see Selma. He suspected she had a special connection with Grendel and asked for her help in capturing the troll. But Selma refused. In anger, Beowulf dragged her up a hill, tied her to a post, and threatened her with a knife, hoping Grendel would appear. Yet the creature never came, and eventually Beowulf released her and left, furious that she seemed to side with the enemy. Meanwhile, Grendel returned to his cave and found his father's skull shattered. His rage exploded. He pounded the ground and swore vengeance. That night, while the villagers slept, Grendel attacked. He killed the outer guards with a spear and stormed into the great hall. Beowulf and his men fought back, but their attacks were useless against Grendel's overwhelming strength. He focused solely on the soldier who had destroyed his father's skull and swiftly killed him. As Grendel tried to escape, Beowulf lunged from behind to seize him, but the troll easily threw him aside. Grendel climbed up to the rafters of the hall, only to have his arm ensnared by a chain trap. The soldiers tried to spear him, but Grendel caught the weapon, and to free himself, he was forced to sever his own arm with the very spear they used. Bleeding heavily, he staggered toward the shore, then leapt into the sea, vanishing beneath the waves along with a pale, ghostly hand that seemed to reach for him. The next morning, during the cremation of the fallen soldiers, Beowulf pressed King Hrothgar to tell the truth about Grendel's origin. At last, the king confessed. Years ago, he himself had killed Grendel's father merely for stealing fish. He had spared the young Grendel only out of pity. Hearing this, Beowulf was both shocked and deeply disappointed. He and his men followed the trail of blood to the sea and concluded that Grendel was dead. That night, a grand feast was held in the hall. Music, roasted meat, and wine filled the room. Grendel's severed arm was displayed as a trophy, shown off proudly and hung upon the wall. Yet beneath the revelry, Beowulf quietly slipped away to meet Selma, the witch. He suspected she was more than just a mysterious woman, that she carried a painful secret. Selma then confessed that long ago, Grendel had once violated her, but ever since, he had also protected her from danger. Their conversation ended as the two fell into each other's arms. Meanwhile, in the village, a pale white figure appeared, Grendel's mother. The monstrous being massacred the villagers mercilessly, took back her son's severed arm, and left behind devastation. A mysterious boy witnessed the carnage and ran to find Selma. Beowulf almost saw him, but Selma quickly hid the child. Elsewhere, King Hrothgar was horrified to find the hall filled with corpses. The next morning, he demanded vengeance. He, Beowulf, and their men followed the trail leading to a seaside cave. There, they found the severed head of one of their soldiers. They ventured deeper until they came upon an underground pool. Beowulf gathered his courage and dove in, and sure enough, the underwater passage led to a vast chamber filled with piles of gold and the lifeless body of Grendel. But suddenly, from the depths, the sea monster, Grendel's mother, emerged and attacked, nearly killing him. But with his combat skills, Beowulf managed to escape and seize a sword, slaying the creature. At that moment, the mysterious child appeared, the same figure who had appeared in Beowulf's dreams. The boy's eyes were identical to Grendel's, revealing that he was the son of Grendel and Selma. Realizing this, Beowulf let the child go, choosing not to harm him. Filled with guilt, Beowulf returned to the village, now drowned in mourning and sorrow. Before setting sail home, he met Selma and asked her to come with him. But Selma refused. To her, Beowulf would always be the man who killed Grendel and left her child, their child of blood, an orphan. In the end, Beowulf went to the shore and built a stone grave as a tribute to the enemy he never truly understood. From afar, the boy and Selma watched as he sailed away. Beowulf left that land not with victory, but with the heavy burden of guilt, one that would never fade. The film ends.